Welcome to the next session of Dr. Plotzker's Mind. There was an op-ed, I guess it was an op-ed, in the New England Journal of Medicine that I have maintained my subscription to in the 4 years since I retired. This one had to do with loneliness, and I've had my own article on loneliness published in Medscape while I was one of their contributors. It's a big problem and one noticed by me since I have kind of difficulty immersing myself with other people. Retirement was a demarcation point since in my working years, particularly the last 8 when I worked in a medical facility rather than my own office, I was with people all the time. And I wouldn't be able to count how many people I said hello to over the course of a day. When I retired, that didn't actually plummet. I could tell the difference. I had gone on vacation, including a cruise after I retired. Shortly thereafter, I enrolled in the University of Delaware senior program, which immersed me with a lot of other people over the next 2 years until COVID became another demarcation point. I also belonged to the synagogue, though I can't say I was enthusiastically immersed there. But certainly for the Osher Institute, not only did I take classes that were well attended, but I interacted with professors in person. I also scheduled my classes so that they would span lunchtime 1 or 2 days a week. I would take my lunch but eat in the cafeteria. Occasionally I would get coffee. I would sit in the lounge and talk to whoever happened to come by. COVID marked a big demarcation point. Basically, in-person synagogue stopped. I don't think I was on any significant committees, but whatever gatherings there are or classes, it all shifted to Zoom. A lot of my professional interactions, though not medical care, also shifted to the screen. Osher Institute suspended for a while, but when it reopened, much of it was electronic access to classes. And even when it reopened in person, the enrollment plummeted by about half. Those lounges were empty. The library study area was closed. There were no food services. Basically, there was no people. During COVID, even at its height, I made a great effort to get out of my house every day. My typical route took me over some familiar roads with some variation. Occasionally, I would stop at the supermarket, if only to avoid being by myself, but not stay there for very long and not buy very much, except for my scheduled grocery shopping. basically there were no people. Now, eventually, COVID opened back up, or ran, not quite ran its course, but the uh, gatherings that had been diverted electronically started occurring in person again. The synagogue, being an Orthodox one, did not have the option of using electronics on Shabbos or holidays. They did and continued to do so for committees and gatherings and classes and on weekday services. Osher Institute now has live classes, and when I enroll in the curriculum, I preferentially select classes that meet in person, even if there is an electronic option for the same class. And not being around other people has become more noticeable, and it's taking a small toll, not an irreparable one, but a small one. What I find is that I'm a little different, and that when I am in a small gathering, I like the attention, I like the back and forth conversation, which doesn't occur very often, and I must say, in a lot of places, is not terribly welcome. Back to the New England Journal article, and to a lesser extent, my article, and many others. What happens as you get later in life is that your expected connections seem to dissipate and sometimes disappear. The kids are now living someplace else. I have the resources to go visit them, or they have the resources to come visit me, but that doesn't happen very often. I can't say that I have a lot of friends that I can count on, my wife and my closest friend. When I travel, even if it's petty travel, I do my best to visit an old friend. I visited one in New York and two in Florida within the past few months. Those were the things that made my trip. When I go to a restaurant, particularly when I'm traveling, I make an attempt to engage somebody on the staff in some kind of conversation, something I probably would not have done during my working years. Now, loneliness is different than solitude. There are times when I kind of like to be by myself, and so does everybody else, I think. Maybe not. But for the most part, what I sense, particularly since COVID and since the Osher Institute contracted very dramatically, is a loss of something that I had before. And it has not been very easy to recapture that. The consequences from a medical standpoint, illustrated by many studies, including some that have gone on decades, is poorer health in your senior years, the less personally connected you are to other people. I find myself going in that direction, but doing my best to resist its getting out of hand. So far, I am perhaps treading water, maybe doing a little better, but It's definitely not what it was and needs to be restored a little closer to what it was. Thanks so much for joining me on this edition of Dr. Plotzker's Mind.